So we're going to talk a little bit about love today. I mean, is love in the air? We had baby dedications, right? So with the baby dedications, it should help with the love, right? Do you feel the love? Do you feel the love or not? Okay, you don't feel the love. Wow. Whew. You know, right now, you walk down the aisle at Walgreens, you're going to be face to face with love, right? You go to Walmart, and you're going to walk down the aisles, and you're going to see all this. Go to Target, right? I mean, they put it in the back of the Target, right? But you see, like, hearts. Let's be honest. Pink hearts, red hearts, conversation hearts. I don't know what those things are really for, but hey, candy hearts, chocolate hearts. Yeah. It's all over the place. It's the love month. Hey guys, just a little tip for you. You have 10 days officially to go get something for that Valentine in your life. So just a little bit of a heads up, a warning. I mean, take your phone right now and put a reminder, 10 days. Or you can wait and be one of the guys that goes at nighttime and frantically looking at all the things that are left on the shelf, which is usually only 2 or 3. I was thinking about this whole Valentine's Day thing, right? This is the love month, right? Last year, you're sitting down, you're ready for this. Last year, do you want to guess? You can't guess. How much money we spent on Valentine's Day? $25.9 billion. What in the world? I mean, my wife's not in here today, so I can say, this is how much I spent. I didn't spend anything. She's listening, though. She's probably got a comment right now in her head. Last year, the average consumer, which is obviously not me because I just confessed, they spent $192 on Valentine's Day. I mean, come on, seriously. That's a lot of chocolate hearts. That's a lot of conversation hearts. Yeah. This year, it's expected to go up $14. $14. So $206. Well, hey, if you have kids, you know that's pretty much on par because you've got to make all these hearts, you've got to make all these, now, like obviously with Instagram and Pinterest, right? All these moms have this almost Pinterest and Instagram shame if they don't like make the perfect hearts for the class as they take. You don't even know what I'm talking about, but it's a thing. I mean, our 10-year-old's already saying like, hey, Mom, we got to make a box that's my mailbox for school. Whenever I was a kid, I just literally said, hey, Mom, Dad, I need a box, I guess, for Valentine's Day at school. They'd say, there's an old shoebox in the closet. Just go grab it. Take a pair of scissors, cut a hole out in the top. You'll be fine. Now you got to never mind. This was interesting to me. As far as the demographic, 35 to 45-year-olds, I'm sorry, 44, I don't know why I said that, 35 to 44-year-olds, they spent $335 on Valentine's Day last year. Okay, I'm not in that demographic. I wouldn't, I mean, if I was, I wouldn't lower the number. $335. I mean, what are they doing? I guess going to dinner, stuff like that. Isn't it ironic, though, that this is the love month, and we value this whole love thing, but it's pretty easy to find hate these days. It's easy to see anger. I mean, it's not hard to see jealousy. And I don't know if you've noticed, but you can see evil all over the place. In this love month, does love really exist? Well, it absolutely does. And today, we're going to talk about the way of love. And if you've been around the church or you've read the Bible a few times, you know exactly where we're going to be at in the Bible. We're going to be at 1 Corinthians 13. I'll give you a chance, if you have your Bibles, to start turning there. But we're talking about the way of love. Before we jump into it, think about the way. So the way is, it's directional. Right? So it's directional. This way, that way, right? It's directional. It gives us an aim. It gives us a goal. It gives us a direction to go to. It communicates the when, the how, the what, the why, the where, the way. Now, I don't want to brag, but I'm pretty good with directions. And there's a reason why. I'll tell you. I'm pretty good. Like I can orientate myself pretty good. If I get lost, I can look up at the sun and say, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. I don't use Google Maps a lot. I mean, I use it just like anybody else, but I don't, when I get in the car every time, turn it down. I like to try things out. I like to go different ways. I like to try new roads. I don't get lost often, and now that I said that, I'll probably get lost going home this afternoon. Google Maps is fine, but I'm an old school person. I actually love paper maps. I love taking the paper maps and opening them wide open. I've got actually a collection of old paper maps. Here's why I'm good with directions. Because at a very young age, I was given a chore. That's what I mean. Some kids, when you're younger, you got a chore like washing the dishes, taking out the trash, cleaning after the dog, right? The chore that I was given at my house was, my chore was to get my mom places, because my mom is directionally challenged. And so as a child, my dad would send me with my mom. He would tell me where I needed to get her, and then I would get her to that place successfully, and then I would get her home. That's the truth. I'm not making any of this up, and I'm not exaggerating. Here's one for you. When I was 7 and 8 years old, my parents moved to Lakeland just for 2 years. My dad was finishing a degree up at Southeastern, and so we came down here just for those 2 years. And I remember very clearly one day my dad said, "Hey, I need to talk to you." And I said, "Okay, what do you need?" And he said, "Tomorrow I need you to get your mom somewhere." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Here's what I need. I've got to work tomorrow, so I can't do it, but somebody's got to get to the airport. So I'm going to need you to get your mom to the airport with that person and then get back home. Do you think you can do it for me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I can do it." I was 8 years old, and I successfully got my mom to Orlando International Airport and then back to Lakeland to our house as an 8-year-old. So I was like her walking Google Maps, I guess, or her living Google Maps. I was always showing her the way. There was times where I'd be astonished. She would say, "Brandon, I just don't know how to get home. How do I go to get home?" And I would look at her and say, "Mom, we've lived in this town for like 10 years. You don't know how to get to your house?" And she was like, "Well, which way do I go?" And I don't know if she would, it was embarrassing to her or not, but I'd always be there to show her the way, showing someone the way. When we think about 1 Corinthians 13, we are literally, God is giving us love to show to people the way. Well, love first. Let's talk about it just for a second. When you think about the way of love in 1 Corinthians 13, he's giving us a plan, he's giving us guidelines, he's giving us how to do it. Not just for the month of February, but for our whole life. Our whole life. If you've got your Bibles, I'm going to read really quick 1 Corinthians 13. Verse 1, "If I speak in tongues of men and of angels, but I have not love, I'm a noisy gong or clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all that I have, and I deliver my body to be burned, but not have love, I've gained nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, love does not boast, Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, that I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Is love. It's all about love. Love should be in the air all the time. But so often, other things invade. Other things invade our lives. And today I want to, just in the time remaining, I want to give you a couple practical things just that come right out of 1 Corinthians 13. And we'll just dive right into it and talk through it. Number one is the way to speak. The way to speak. Verse 1. If I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. So here's a question for you today is, how's your verbal? Like, how's your verbal? When you're talking to people, do they sense love or do they sense something entirely different? Are your words sharp? Like, do they mean pain and hurt for somebody? Or are your words filled with love? When people hear you speak, do they sense that love that should be there in your tongue? I mean, this is a great question if you're married. Maybe just step away for a second from your spouse and then say, hey, what's my words like? Are they kind of loving? Do they make you feel good or are they mean, right? Are you an encourager? Like, do the words that you speak, do they build people up? Do they make them feel better about themselves? Or do your words tear people down? Or are you sarcastic? Some of you know this. I teach school, and I have the privilege of seeing 100 middle schoolers every single day. Anytime you want to say a prayer for me, please, you can. I welcome all prayers because there is not a day that you can even script and predict what's going to happen. I mean, I had a student the other day that climbed under my desk to scare me. In the midst, unplugged all the cords. I had a student the other day that thought the fruit spray was good for his mouth, and it was actually hand sanitizer. Yeah, I mean, there's not a day that I go and I like, you know what, this is going to be a normal day. There's not with middle schoolers. There's not a normal day, and I love them, I guess you could say. Earlier in the school year, they were in my room doing evaluation, and they said to me, one of the administrators said, hey, we need you to work on something. And I said, okay, what's that? And they said, you need to like curb your sarcasm. Like, you're way too sarcastic for these middle schoolers. And I said, okay, I think I can work on that. And so the administrators started walking out the door, and as soon as they walked out the door, I made a comment to the kids. And the administrator turned back and said, I thought you were going to work on that. And I said, oh yeah, I'm going to work on that next week. Are you sarcastic? Like, what is your words like? Do your words ooze love? Or are your words the opposite? Hey, it's weird sometimes with this whole love thing, right? I mean, we've kind of done it to ourselves. The world's kind of messed this whole thing up a little bit for us, right? And I'll give you an example. I was on the phone, this was years ago, with a friend, and we were getting to the end of the conversation. And as we got to the end of the conversation, he said on the phone, hey, I just wanted to tell you I love you. And so I kind of sidestepped it because I was like, ooh, that's weird. I mean, sure. Great, sure, whatever. And so I kept talking about something else like, hey, I can hear the birds out my office window. And then a few minutes later, as our conversation continued, he said, hey, I just wanted to tell you, I really love you. And I was like, oh, my word, I think I heard a jet plane that just went over our office building. That thing looks close, or seems close. And all of a sudden, as I dodged it the third time, he said, I just wanted to tell you I love you. And I was like, what is going on right now? Like, and so he said it 5 times, and I took my phone and I hung up on him. I did. I hung up on him. And I was like, what in the world? Why? It's because we've had the love thing has been so diluted. It's so messed up now. The world has taken something that was once pure and they've messed it all up. And so now we have people that hang up on people when they're trying to express their love for them. It's truly. Number 2, the way to avoid being a nothing. The way to avoid being a nothing. Verse 3, if I give away all that I have and I deliver up my body to be burned, but I have not love, I've gained nothing. So let me just tell you right now, if you want to be a nothing in life, if your aim is literally like, I want to be a nothing, there it is, right there. There's your plan. Just take it and do it, because you will be a nothing. Like, the interesting thing here is if you think about this, if I give away all that I have, if I deliver my body to be burned, right? So when you think about that, you think of this selfless act, right? You're generous, right? You're like, it's not about me, it's about other people. I'm just gonna give and give and give. But all that compassion, if it's not rooted in love, nothing. Nothing. It's got to be rooted in love. Love is the factor that's needed. Imagine, as Pastor Stan said, we have the missions month here at New Life. And imagine over the next month, if you're here and there's a missionary, and all of a sudden the missionary starts flashing pictures up on the screen, and they're like, hey, look at this child. This child here needs just a partner. And for $25 a month, you could partner with this child and give them some food or school supplies or whatever, right? And you're like, oh, your heart's moved, and you're like, oh, I'm feeling generous. I'm going to do that. But you know what? I'm not just going to do that. I'm going to sponsor 20 kids, right? You're like, I'm going to sell my car. I'll just take the money. I'll sponsor 50 kids, right? You could be the most generous person in the world. And if you don't have love, you're nothing. You're nothing. Love is fuel. Love is a driving force, and we need it. Number 3, so we have talked about really quick, just to recap, the way to speak. We've talked about the way to avoid being a nothing. And number 3, the way to endure. The way to endure. Verse 7, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. This is literally about relationships. Think about your relationships are connected to your life. What are they centered around? Are they centered around love, or are they centered around selfishness? Are they centered around one-sidedness? Like, are the relationships that are in your life, are they healthy or are they toxic? Are the relationships following this model here in verse 7? Are the relationships good? Do the relationships build somebody else up, or do they tear them down? I mean, this is a great question to ask your spouse. Like, how am I doing? Am I bearing all things? Am I believing all things? Am I hoping all things? Do I endure with you, right? We need to add love to the relationships that we have. And that's hard, again, because we've kind of messed this whole thing up a little bit. The world has this whole love. It's not pure anymore. Like, you say something like that, and they're going to think you're weird. Case in point. I was having a conflict with a friend, acquaintance, whatever you want to call the person. Some conflict, nothing big. And so this person decided to resolve the conflict, and this is how he did it. So we met, and as we were talking through conflict, okay, this was Orlando, it was August, so I mean, it was a tad warm that day. When I say a tad warm, kind of sweaty. And so as we're talking through this conflict, he decides to give me a hug. Now, I shouldn't say this, but I'm really not a big hugger. And it's been a joke for years and years. At the church that I was on staff at in Michigan for 10 years, it was kind of the joke. And everybody would try, all my friends would try to give the most awkward hugs to me just because they know I love them so much. So as this person's talking through this conflict, all of a sudden it goes to a hug moment, which I don't really script that out. Like, I don't see that coming, but he did. And so he kind of came in. Like, he didn't just come in for the hug. He settled in for the hug. Like, it was going to be a hug for a little bit. Like, it was not like a little, like, tap, tap, tap. It was a, let's just going to give you, let's wrap it all up. But it was sweaty that day, like I told you, and his cheek literally like went right here against my cheek. It was so weird, okay? It was awkward. I was not sure what he was doing, but his cheek is right here, and he's just like hugging me, and I'm just standing there straight, you know? And I'm enduring this, right? And I'm just like, could this end like anytime soon? And then, because it's conflict, he decides to pray. And so he starts praying. And every time that you moved his jaw, like it's right here on my jaw like this, and he's praying, and I'm just telling you, like, I don't even know what he prayed about. I guess I wasn't close to God at the moment. I was like, please, could somebody get this guy, like, away from me? Okay, so don't run out and try to hug everybody that you see, because then you'll be like that guy, right? But it's the concept that for our relationships, that there's got to be some love there. Like, we have to show people what true love really is. If you want the relationships in your life to last, love has to be at the center. Love always has to lead. And number 4, the way that never ends. The way that never ends. Verse 8, love never ends. Love never ends. Guess what? Everything else in your life, it's going to end. At some point, everything that you know is going to end. But you know what's not going to end? Love. Like, God instilled this in the very start in creation. And it's been going on ever since. Love isn't going to go away. It doesn't have a shelf life. It's consistent and it's constant. But everything that we know is temporal. Love isn't. We have to realize that this love is a love that lasts forever. You know, love, it's not easy. Let's just be honest. Let's take a second and stop here. Love is not easy because love involves showing it to somebody else. And I don't know about you, but it's hard for me at times to show love to people. Like, sometimes people that I don't know. Like, I'm going to be honest. I haven't lived in Lakeland that long, but I don't even understand what in the world kind of traffic thing happens here on 98. Like, when you're going down 98, or the worst, I think, is go on the other side of Lakeland, because we live on the south side, and drive down South Florida. Like, I don't understand the driving here. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even understand how many times I've got on I-4 going to like Orlando or Tampa, and in the left lane, the far left lane, it's like 60 miles an hour. And I'm like, well, this doesn't even make sense. Like, I'm going to be honest, in Michigan, you might get bumped or something, you know? I mean, I lived in Michigan. We've been married almost 22 years, and we've lived in Michigan 16 of the 22 years. And Michigan, for the longest that I can remember, they would always say, like, we have the highest auto insurance rates in the country because the driving is so bad. They did not come here. I don't know where road rage came from. I don't even know how to describe it, but I have it. Like, I don't get it. I get in the car and I'm just like, thank goodness I don't have one of my trucks that I had in Michigan. Because I think I'd bump somebody. I think I would just like, hey, come on, bump, let me get you out of the way. Hey, if that's not a test for you to see if your love ends, right? I got another one for you. So when we first came down, we got Disney passes. I feel like every person comes to Disney, or a tourist, I should say tourist, they come to Disney and literally they become directionally challenged. I mean, they're literally standing in front. They're like, wonder where the castle's at. And they're standing like looking at it. But why they're standing, they have a stroller that's not just like a double stroller, but it's like a triple stroller because they have so many kids. And they're blocking, and you're just like, could you just get out of the way? Go to Disney. I'm serious. You'll see if your love ends. I mean, because it's crazy sometimes. God's love, it will never end. It will never end. Number 5, and I'm wrapping up. Number 5, the way that's the greatest. The way that's the greatest. Verse 13. So now faith, hope, and love abide, these 3, but the greatest of these is love. I told you I'm in a classroom with 100 middle schoolers every day, and I have a lot of athletes, and they'll debate for hours on who is the GOAT, the greatest of all times. And so I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, the greatest of all times when it comes to a round ball is Michael Jordan. I mean, hands down. He is the greatest. And, of course, then they all get all yelling and screaming and it's LeBron. LeBron is the person, and I'm just like, I don't even want to listen to this. But who's the greatest? Who's the greatest? It's Super Bowl week, right? So who's the greatest quarterback that's ever played? You could argue that it's Tom Brady. I mean, who's the greatest running back that's ever played? You could argue that it's, an Emmitt Smith. Who's the greatest wide receiver? You could say that it's I'm a little partial, but you could say it's Calvin Johnson. The greatest linebacker, you could say Lakeland's own Ray Lewis. But all these men that are great at something, are they great at love? Because that's really what our aim should be, is that we are great at showing God's love. But did you pick up, though, in this verse? Let me just reread it to you. Verse 13. So now faith, hope, love, abide. So what's that telling us? It's telling us that, guess what? You need faith, you need hope, and you need love. You can't just park on love and say, you know what? This guy named Brandon was talking about love at church today. You know what? I'm going to start being more intentional and showing people love. You need faith in Jesus Christ. You saw the word there, the clarifier. It's abide. Like, that faith has to be in you. If that faith isn't in you, love is never going to be great. You'll never be the greatest of all times when it's showing love to people if that faith isn't in you. And that faith only comes through Jesus Christ. That's it. Love is a game changer. You think about it. If you made an intentional effort to start showing love, curbing your sarcasm, changing your tone, working on your words, holding the door for somebody, carrying some groceries, looking next door and saying, you know what, I got time. I'm going to cut the grass. They look like they've been gone or they've been busy. Like, just think about things that you could do just to show love. It would be a game changer. The way of love. Today, how are you doing with it? How are you doing with it? It's a biblical mandate, 1 Corinthians 13. You're not going to get around it. You're not going to be able to rip that chapter out of your Bible. But when I think about the way, I'll close with this. Something else comes to my mind. John 14:6. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father, God, except through me. That's another way. But then you got 1 John 4:8. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. So let me unpack this for you. So God is love. That's what we just heard. And you can't get to God unless you go through Jesus. So then Jesus has to be about love as well. So then we have to be about love as well. Because we got to follow his commands. We have to follow his example. You will know whose you are by how you love. We must love. Imagine right now if New Life decided, you know what? We're going to do this. Like, in our jobs, at our schools, in our neighborhoods, we're going to intentionally show love to people. New Life loves. It would change you, but it would change this church. People would be like, wow, I want to like being around them. They make me feel good because they're showing this biblical love that's pure, that's holy. God isn't giving us an option today. He's telling us, hey, guess what? New Life, you got to love. Jesus.